What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my top 10 waiver wire targets heading into week 12 of the NFL season. These are going to be players that are rostered in 40% or fewer leagues using the ESPN waiver wire. And let's dive right into my number one target. I'm going to start off by talking about Emanuel Wilson, rostered in 5.9% of leagues. Now, he might not be the number one target after today when we get some more like injury news on Josh Jacobs. But Josh Jacobs left week 11 with a knee injury. At this point, it's not believed to be season ending, but he certainly could miss some time. And we've kind of seen Emanuel Wilson operate as the running back 2 behind Josh Jacobs, but his usage was really strong after Jacobs left. He took 94% of the snaps, and he saw an 100% opportunity share in that backfield. Ended with 11 carries for 40 yards and a touchdown, also caught a pass for 9 yards. And for as long as Josh Jacobs is out, like Wilson at worst is a running back 2 play, someone that you feel very confident throwing into your lineup on a decent offense. The unit wants to run the ball. And then this is just a shout out to pretty much like all the handcuff running backs, where the later we get into the season, the less and less likely it is that you have guys just sitting on waivers that you actually trust in your lineup and can play on a week-to-week basis. But these handcuff running backs, all you need is one injury, and all of a sudden they're a solid running back 2. In some cases, maybe even like a weekly running back 1, especially in solid matchups. So Emanuel Wilson is an example of that. We'll obviously wait and see to get more info on the Josh Jacobs injury, but at this point, I do think he is a really solid pickup. Another really strong pickup at the running back position, someone who I was really high on coming into the season. It hasn't been great so far, but this kind of looked like the breakout game. It is Bhayshul Tuten, who is rostered in 18.5% of leagues. And we really saw him like pretty much enter a 50-50 split with Travis Etienne before he left with his ankle injury. So just really unfortunate timing with that injury. But at the point where Tuten left with that ankle, he was leading Etienne in carries 15-12. He looked really good on the ground, 15 carries for 74 yards and a touchdown. And so like if he can get healthy, he did do media post game, which, makes you think he's at least somewhat okay and it's not like a super serious injury. But it seemed like at the very least he was entering some sort of like very close committee between him and Travis Etienne. But it's also possible with just him being, like the young rookie option. Travis Etienne historically has really kind of faded down the stretch, that Tuten could potentially just take over this backfield within the next few weeks. Even at worst, right? And this is like a pretty close committee. Tuten should still be rostered. He has been a guy who, even in limited reps, has been mixing in near the goal line, so he does have some of that touchdown upside. And the Jaguars are just going to be very reliant on the run game with all the injuries they have to their pass catchers. So Bhayshul Tuten, a very, very strong pickup. Then this next guy's interesting because he's coming off a monster game. It's Sean Tucker, rostered in 28.6% of leagues. In week 11, he gets 19 carries for 106 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, also catches 2 passes for 34 yards and a touchdown with a total of 34 PPR points. He also led Rachaad White in opportunities 21-13, so it seemed like he was kind of pulling away with the backfield there. And this was also like a game script that wasn't necessarily like super positive for him, right? Like it was a back and forth game. They were trailing at points. You would think that would go to Rachaad White, more of like that pass catching back. But Sean Tucker was just an absolute monster, certainly produced and made the most on his opportunities. The issue here with Sean Tucker, and this is something I think it was last year where he had another monster game, is like once Bucky Irving is back, it doesn't seem like he's going to be super fantasy relevant. And we did see Bucky return to practice this past week. But like, I guess worst case scenario, he's just a very strong handcuff where the toothpaste should be out of the tube here. If Bucky were to have a setback, maybe he misses another week. Like Sean Tucker would be the running back to play in this backfield and not Rachaad White. So I did want to talk about him. Not sure what his like long-term utility is as like a solid option in your lineup if Bucky does return, but did want to give him a shout out there. Someone who could be considered like a desperate play, and I've talked about him over the last couple of weeks, Devin Singletary, rostered in 32.6% of leagues. And I did think like Dable getting fired could potentially shift the usage more in favor of Tyrone Tracy. Devin Singletary had kind of been Dable's guy, had brought him in from Buffalo. But really the usage stayed the same. Like Singletary and Tracy split the snaps and routes pretty much 50-50. We saw Singletary play a lot more, or like dominated the short yardage, goal line snaps, Tracy more of like the 2-minute drill, third down usage. Singletary inefficient on the ground, 16 carries for 44 yards, but he scores 2 rushing touchdowns, from those goal line looks, catches 1 pass for 3 yards, 17.7 PPR points. So it was a solid game, obviously super touchdown dependent. I do think for Singletary specifically, it's a lot better for him when Jameis Winston is out there, because Jackson Dart does really use his legs near the goal line, taking some of those goal line carries that could go to Singletary. So we'll see if Jackson Dart bounces back, but like Singletary's still going to be like a desperate weekly running back 3 play. And then I believe the final running back in this video, Chris Rodriguez, rostered in 6.7% of leagues. This Commanders backfield has just been so gross all season long. It seems like whoever you actually go into the week feeling good about and start, they just do not perform. And then it's someone else, kind of improving their role and having a decent game. And this week, that was C-Rod, 15 carries for a very efficient 79 yards. Also caught 1 pass for 6 receiving yards. The issue is, like, he's still not pulling away in this backfield. Like, he only had a 50% opportunity share. You still had Bill Krosky-Merritt, Jeremy McNichols also involved, but C-Rod did see 3 goal line snaps. He took 100% of the short yardage snaps. It's just like this role with the Commanders. It's a very low upside role, and like we knew that with Brian Robinson, but it's even worse because not only is the offense way worse, right? But you pretty much have Chris Rodriguez and Bill Krosky-Merritt like splitting that early down role. And I guess there's a little bit more usage because like McNichols isn't quite as involved as Austin Eckler was, but you're looking at like a touchdown reliant role. They don't have a ton of receiving upside, and this is just not a good team. So they're not in a lot of leading game scripts where you're going to be able to rack up a lot of volume on the ground and score a lot of touchdowns. So like, yeah, I guess you could pick up Chris Rodriguez heading into week 12. I think he's the most valuable Commanders running back, but still someone that feels like a very sketchy weekly start. Then let's talk about a couple of wide receivers. The first guy I will talk about here, someone I've talked about a lot, it is Luther Burden, who is rostered in 5.9% of leagues. Now, he did not go out and have a monster game, 5 targets, 3 receptions for 27 yards, but this was finally the week where he took over the wide receiver 3 role. He had a 61% route participation. He outsnapped Olamide Zaccheaus 33-10, and then ran 22 routes to Olamide's 7. So he has that role, should have it on lock. Like, I don't see him bleeding opportunities to Zaccheaus moving forward, but this just wasn't a great game for him to like really take advantage of that new role. Like, Caleb threw for under 200 passing yards, didn't throw for a passing touchdown. You had Rome, Moore, Komet, like Loveland, like everyone's involved. No one really had a great game, but moving forward, like, this is interesting, right? He's a young, fun player. When these rookies, even like later in the season, start to kind of break out, improve their roles, we want to take notice. And so I think even as like a speculative ad, I would pick up Luther Burden, especially like if on your bench, you've got like some random veteran wide receivers who are like your wide receiver 5, your wide receiver 6. If you've got someone on your bench where you're like, I cannot foresee myself starting this player or like having any interest in starting them, barring like 3 injuries to wide receiver, then, take the flyer, get the lottery ticket on Luther Burden, and maybe he has one of these second half, like dominant rookie breakouts. And then the other wide receiver I wanted to talk about, Michael Wilson, rostered in 15.2% of leagues, goes out in week 11, gets targeted 17 times, catches 14 of them for 151 yards. Just a crazy game from Michael Wilson. The passing volume with Jacoby Brissett has been awesome. He's averaging 42.4 pass attempts per game in his 5 starts. And then Michael Wilson really took advantage of, first off, the passing volume, but then also Marv missing this game with appendicitis. Now, if Marv is back, I don't really want Michael Wilson in my lineup, but there might be this short window where if Marv misses another game or 2, then Michael Wilson could be playable just based on the volume and them having no one else at wide receiver. So Michael Wilson, potential like short window option here at wideout. Then I want to talk about a couple of tight ends. The first one being Juwan Johnson, rostered in 35% of leagues. It's possible he was dropped in a few spots since the Saints were on bye this week, but he's just been a very solid, steady option at tight end. 10.8 PPR points per game, which for someone who I think has only scored 2 touchdowns, like that's a very solid number. In his last 4, he's averaging 13.6. You have Rashid Shaheed gone, so the 2 like legit viable pass catchers are Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson. There's really no one else here. And then week 10, he's coming off his best game of the season, 4 receptions for 92 yards and a touchdown. And then also shout out to Tyler Shuck. Like, he has looked decent through 2 weeks. He's not a world beater. He was never going to be a world beater, but he has looked competent at the quarterback position, led them to a win in week 10, and then also coming off the bye week. So maybe he looks more comfortable, more reps with the first team. Juwan Johnson, just a very decent start at tight end. And then the other tight end here, Brenton Strange, rostered in just over 10% of leagues. He had his practice window opened this past week, obviously did not suit up and play in week 11, but he was on IR with a hip injury, should be nearing a return. And we had seen in his last 2 healthy games, he had been productive, 6 receptions for 61 yards, and then 6 receptions for 45 yards. And I kind of think that when he comes back, he can be a legit starting option. Like, he had emerged as a solid weapon, prior to the injury. And the Jaguars just need guys who can produce through the air. Travis Hunter out for the season. Brian Thomas Jr., he is still banged up. And even when he has been out there, he's looked rough. Parker Washington, was the guy in the short term, but he's not some sort of amazing talent. And then Jacoby Myers, he's kind of settling into the offense. But I do think Brenton Strange has the upside to potentially be their most valuable pass catcher rest of season. And then the last guy I want to talk about here, I typically don't talk about quarterbacks because I feel like picking them up is just so dependent on your team and bye weeks and all of that stuff. But I did want to talk about Jacoby Brissett, rostered in 23.7% of leagues, because I've just straight up been wrong on him. He has had a bunch of solid games in a row, and some people had commented in my quarterback rankings, where's Jacoby? He's been good. You don't have him in your top 20, and I just haven't been buying it. I thought he was going to come back down to earth, and he's just been super steady. He scored at least 19 points. That's in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues. In all 5 starts, he's averaging 21.3 points per game. And the volume, like I talked about with Michael Wilson, it's just been crazy. 42.4 pass attempts per game. He just set the NFL completion record in their Week 11 loss with 47. That is wild. And then he just had a game where he was very productive, even without Marvin Harrison Jr., with pretty much no weapons at wideout. Maybe that's disrespectful to Michael Wilson, but no one thinks Michael Wilson is some sort of world beater. He's got Trey McBride at tight end, but still, he's putting up numbers. He's kind of been this garbage time warrior where the defense gets torched early on. They're in these trailing game scripts, and he just gets to pass the ball a million times because they also can't trust their run game. They got this revolving door of Bam Knight, Amari DiMercado, Michael Carter, just gross options at the running back spot. And then also in his next 2 games, he has solid back-to-back matchups against the Jaguars and the Buccaneers, 2 defenses that I'm not super scared of from the quarterback perspective. So Jacoby Brissett, wanted to give him a shout out. I've been wrong on him. He's looked good, and he's been a solid option for fantasy. So that is going to wrap it up for my top 10 pickups. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.